Hey everybody, Sean here from Board Paracord and Paracord.com, and today I want to show you one of these. This is a kind of showing up quite a bit in the groups. These are 40 caliber shell casings, and what we've got inside of here is a solid copper wire. Now, the copper wire that I just got, I made this with, is a 12 gauge copper wire. Nothing real special about it. If you're using the 40 gauge or the 40 caliber shell casings, you might want to go up to like a 10 gauge wire, just so that you can fill up this little extra gap right around this edge here. But it still looks pretty cool anyway. So with that in mind, the direction that I give you will still work either way you go. But if you're looking for something that fills up this gap a little bit better, go with a little heavier gauge wire. You can get the shell casings on BoardParacord.com, and I might also throw them up on Paracord.com for you too. So one thing you want to do with this copper wire, to start off, get a nice flat piece here, and you want to measure this around your wrist. I'll show you how to do that. So what you're going to do, you want this to fit loosely, and you want it to have a little bit of a gap. So what I did is I fit this tight around my wrist, and I cut it right there. So if your wrist is 9 inches, measure 9 inches, back it up about a ½ inch to an inch. And I'm going to adjust my camera down just a little bit here. There we go. So let's say you're doing an 8-inch wrist. You measure 8 inch, and then you back it up about a ½ inch to an inch, depending on how big of a gap you want, and then you just cut it off. And these side cutters that are available on the website make it real easy. I just shot that piece of copper wire into another room. Make it real easy to give that nice clean cut on this wire. And the first thing we're going to do is I got about 6 feet of paracord here, and I think I cut about a foot or 2 off of it, but I always want to have a little extra just to give you a little room to play with. Now the first thing we're going to do, we're going to get this set here for a second, and I'm going to bring in my hot glue gun, because you are going to need a hot glue gun. And we're going to use one of these shell casings, and I'm just going to fill this. I want to get my wire ready and a piece of the paracord. We're going to fill this case with just a little bit of glue, so that when you put the paracord in there, it doesn't squirt out the top. So you kind of got to figure that out, that little balance there. You want enough glue in there that it fills the whole case, but it doesn't shoot out the top when you put the paracord in there. So let's go ahead and do that. And this glue stick that I have, it does not work in this gun very well, so just bear with me while I get this glue in here. And I gotta work around my camera a little bit. I can't see what I'm doing. Alright, I think that'll be good for that one. So this shell casing is going to be a little warm because of the glue. Now you're going to put your paracord, oh, and the glue gun's a little warm. You're going to put the paracord and the copper wire right next to each other and just stick it right down in there. And you just want this to sit. You want it to set up just for a little bit, just until that glue is nice and hard in there. Because if you start messing around with it, what happens is the glue will get kind of brittle and it will come apart. I had that happen first time I made it. There's a couple ways you can wear this. I've seen a few people wearing them like this with the shell casings on the back. I think it's kind of cool to have the shell casings out in front of you. And one thing about these shell casings, let me just zoom in on one of these so you can see. You want to make sure that you get a shell casing that has this little dimple in the very center. That means that it's a spent shell casing and that the primer is not live anymore. You do not want to get a shell casing that has a live primer in it, because it is a form of explosive. That's what ignites the gunpowder inside and projects the bullet out of the casing. So make sure that if you're using shell casings, all the casings I sell are used. Alright, and we'll just come back to this. And I think we're good now. So this is the easy part. So all you're going to do is leave the wire out here and you're just going to roll this. And I found it easiest to make sure that this wire is nice and flat so it doesn't catch on your hand. You got a little bend here, so we'll get that bend out. And you're just going to spin this in your fingers. Just like that. I mean, it's that easy. You're just going to spin it until it gets all the way to the other end. I'm basically just twisting this wire in my hand and kind of guiding this paracord right to where it needs to go. I'm just using my fingers as kind of the guide and then pressing down with my thumb to pull it tight. There we go. I thought about hooking a drill onto this and just spinning it real fast, but this really doesn't take long at all. I would say you could probably do one of these bracelets if you got really fast at it. Just do a bunch of casings, line them all up, and do this part, and then just do it in steps. You could probably knock out 5 of these in under 20 minutes pretty easily, I would think. Alright, now when we get down to the end here, what I'm going to do is I just want to tighten this up a little bit. And the way I'm going to do that is to go to this end, and it did unravel just a little bit, but I just want to turn this in my hands. And that's going to get rid of a lot of the slack that was in there. And then push it. You want to push everything, kind of like when you have a bracelet, you want to push everything toward the buckle. In this case, you're doing it towards the casing there. So we're just going to do this almost all the way. And what I want to do here, I want to grab some hot glue, and I'm going to put hot glue right on the end of this. And this hot glue gun is not being friendly. I got these new hot glue sticks, and they're kind of slippery. They don't catch in the gun very well. I'm just going to put some hot glue right on the tip of this and then wrap the paracord over it and let it dry. And what that does is that locks the paracord onto the copper wire so that when I cut it, it doesn't unravel. And also, we can just let it sit there now. Now I'm going to move this over here. I just burned myself before I turn my camera back on. I use the side cutters, the cutting shears I think I call them on the website. And I got some glue in there, so that's why it's, there we go. Alright, so now all we have to do is grab another casing and repeat the process from the beginning. And just fill this casing up, some glue. And that's more than enough. If you get some glue on the outside of the case, don't worry about it. It peels right off. And we're just gonna, I don't know if you can see this very well, but all I'm doing is sticking this paracord and the copper wire right down inside of the case. And you can see I have a little bit of glue that just popped out of there. So what I want to do is get that, I'm going to use a piece of paracord and just kind of roll the paracord in the glue, and that'll pull the glue right up out of there because it's still hot. And then we're just going to let that sit. I mean, that's really all there is to it. Like I said, I'm going to zoom in on this so you can see what I'm talking about with this gap. As you can see, there is a little bit of a gap right here. Now, one thing you could do is if you're using the 12 gauge wire, which this is 12 gauge wire, and these are 40 caliber casings. So kind of remember that. If you want to use a 12 gauge wire, you might want to go down to like a 9mm casing. That's going to be a smaller diameter casing, so you don't have this gap. Now if you want to use the 40 caliber casing, which these are 40 caliber, I would suggest going up to a thicker diameter wire, which would be like a 10 gauge wire, possibly even an 8 gauge, but I think 10 gauge would be just perfect. This is still pretty hot over here, but it feels nice and solid, so I'm going to show you how it looks on my wrist. I'm going to take this one off because this one, that one's finished. And then you just want to kind of find your center point here And I mean, there's no right way to do this, but you just bend it. And the ends are going to have more of a bend to them because that's the skinny part of your wrist. And then you slide this over the skinny part of your wrist, like that. And that gives you a nice bullet casing bracelet with the paracord on there. And from that, let's see, we got about 1, 2, about 3 foot total that I cut off of there. So I really only used 3 to 4 feet per bracelet. Doesn't use a lot. You can get a spool at Home Depot. It's 12 gauge solid brass. I don't know, I think it's copper. Solid copper wire spool of it. I think I paid $12 for 50 feet. That's a pretty reasonable price. I only used about 5 feet. And it actually might be a 100-foot spool. I can't remember. But all in all, you've really just got the bullet casings, about 4 feet of cord, and then about 8 inches of copper wire in there. And these turn out really nice. I'm going to get some 10 gauge wire, maybe some 8 gauge, just to play with it. Once I can fill this gap up, they'll look real nice. Very easy to do, and like I said, you could probably knock one of these out in less than 5 minutes if you're getting, a process going on them. But anyways, thanks for watching. I hope you like this, and until next time, paracord on.